I really like giving my recommendations for beginner starter kits when it comes to art supplies because it can get very overwhelming. I've already made a video about a starter kit for acrylic painting as well as a starter kit for oil pastels. I'll link the videos below if you're curious. But today I want to focus on drawing art supplies for beginners, so kind of like a general sketching and drawing kit. I'll start the list with a very basic necessary items, then I'll add a few nice to haves, and I'll end with some recommendations if you want to add color to your kit. I 100% recommend going to a specialized art supply store, not just any store like Walmart or whatever. I feel like art supply stores have good quality material, so that's what I would recommend. The two basic things needed, of course, are a sketchbook and pencils. For pencils, there's really nice ready-made kits that are really cool if you want to give them as a gift or if you want to carry them with you because they come in a tin. Pencils are graded in the level of blackness of the lead and the level of hardness. So H for hard, B for black. There are a lot of gradients and types. I feel like the very basic kit doesn't have to have many pencils. I would say an HB, which is right in the middle, a 2H, which is pretty hard, and a 2B, which is a lot darker, would do the job. But if you pick something in a tin, I would suggest picking the ones that have more HB and Bs as opposed to the ones that have a lot of H in the kit. For sketchbooks, I recommend a 9x12. I feel like it's a really good size, not too big, not too small. Smaller sketchbooks are very tempting because you can bring them with you easily on the go and like sketch on the go, but there could be limiting. I feel like 9x12 is pretty good. I prefer a mixed media sketchbook, meaning that the paper is made for mixed media. It's a paper specially made for a little bit of everything. So it's thick enough to put a little bit of paint on top if I want to. The grain is not too coarse. The grain is not too smooth. So I could use ink, paint, pencil, charcoal, a bunch of different things. Mixed media is really the thing to use if you want to start out or just have one sketchbook. There are so many beautiful sketchbooks out there and it's very tempting to get a really nice one, especially if you want to give it as a gift. One thing that I would say is that I recommend one that you could lay completely flat, because the other ones that are maybe nicer might not lay flat, and that's kind of a bummer when you're trying to draw. And with experience, the prettier the sketchbook, the less I tend to use it, because I tend to be too much of a perfectionist when it comes to really nice sketchbooks. To me, sketchbooks are a tool to kind of mess around with, to learn a specific technique, practice drawing skills, but also if I have an idea for a painting, I would kind of like try it on paper quickly before going on canvas, see if things work. So pretty sketchbooks are more difficult for me to work with. I prefer to have like a rugged, messy sketchbook that will really do the job. So the one with the spiral that really lay flat are perfect for me. Next in the basic kit is a pencil sharpener and an eraser. I really like the Staedtler eraser. It's really a staple. Everybody uses it. It works really well. And the first nice to have in the kit for me would be a detailing eraser, which is this type of eraser with a very small point. It's good to fix mistakes in smaller details, but also it's really great to add highlights. If you do fur or hair, let's say, you could go back in and erase parts of it to create highlights in the drawing. It works really well and it's a really nice little thing to have. These are called blending stumps. Personally, I would put them in the must-haves, but it's not really a must-have. They're just very, very practical for blending. And because they're so inexpensive, I feel like why would you go without? They make really nice gradients, and when they're kind of messy and dirty, the way to clean them up is to rub them on a piece of sandpaper. All right, to go a little bit further in the drawing art supply list, I would recommend charcoal. It's really fun to experiment with charcoal and to sketch more spontaneous pieces of work or studies. You can go quite detailed with charcoal, of course, but I kind of use pencil for the more detailed studies when I want to learn a specific technique, and charcoal, I personally use it more as an expressive tool, but it's really a question of preference. You can go very detailed and realistic with both. There are different kinds of charcoals. There's the Willow sticks. They're a little bit messy, but not the messiest. The messiest are the compressed charcoal. They're very soft and brittle, but they have the most pigment. They're very, very dark black, but they really dirty the page and your hands will be black as well. They're kind of like soft pastel, but black. There's also charcoal pencils, which are pretty cool. They come in different variations of blackness as well. But when buying a charcoal pencil, you need an Exacto knife to sharpen it because it doesn't really sharpen with a regular pencil sharpener. And the last type of charcoal is a Conte Crayon. It's not really charcoal. It's kind of a hybrid between a pencil and charcoal. It's very hard, not as brittle or messy. It's kind of waxy in a way. It doesn't really erase that well, but it's really fun to experiment with as well. If you want to get into charcoal, I would 100% recommend getting kneadable erasers. They're super soft erasers that you use to pick up like the excess pigment and crummies on your paper. You could also make them into a little point to go back in and create highlights. They're very, very useful. Now, if you love color and you want to add a little bit of color to your drawing kit, I have 3 options for you, but there are many other ones. Acrylic paints and watercolors are really classic options, but I feel like they're categories in themselves, so I didn't really include them in this recommendation for drawing. For paint, I would recommend maybe a small starter gouache kit. So the 3 primary colors, blue, red, and yellow, a black and a white, with a very basic brush sampler kit. Gouache can be pretty affordable, and it's kind of like midway between acrylic and watercolor in the sense that once it's dry, you can go back with a little bit of water and reactivate the paint as you would do with watercolor. But as opposed to watercolor, gouache is opaque, so no transparencies. And the finish is very, very matte and kind of like milky or powdery, as opposed to acrylic that is a little bit more of a satin finish and kind of like a plastic feel. Gouache is very underrated, I feel like, and it's fun to experiment with, especially in sketchbooks. The other 2 bits of colors I would recommend is 1, oil pastels. I have so many videos on oil pastels, how to use them. If you're curious about them, you can take a look at my videos. Pretty much any oil pastel set that you pick up at the art supply store would do the job perfectly, and it's so inexpensive. The one thing to know is that they're a little bit messy. They make a lot of crummies, so the kneadable eraser would really come in handy for that. They dirty your fingers a little bit, but it's not so bad, and they can be used with blending stumps as well. But a classic recommendation for drawing and for colors would be colored pencils, of course. Very often good quality colored pencils come in singles, so you get to pick your colors, and they're $1 or $2 each pencils. I bought myself a case like this just because I feel like it's easier to reach for my colors as opposed to a pencil case. One thing to remember though is that we've used colored pencils in school as children, but they can be quite precise and you can go extremely realistic with colored pencils. Some artists do very impressive things with colored pencils. They can also be used in mixed media work, and they could be used in a very expressive way. And if I had to pick between all 3, I would probably recommend the colored pencils to add a bit of color for drawing, just because I feel like it's the less complicated option if you want to keep a more basic drawing kit. No need to buy brushes or to carry water or any of that stuff. I've listed everything below if you need a shopping list. If you want more inspiration, you can watch this one next. If you like art, hit the bell for more. Thanks for watching. Bye.